Welcome to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast, providing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs with the 3 Ins: insights, inspirations, and intentional actions. Delivered through monologues and dialogues, we address topics like leadership, productivity, time management, work-life balance, and challenges like stress, conflict, mental health, and much more. Please do not hold back from suggesting specific topics and guests you would like on this podcast. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. And yes, this is one of those weeks where I have a guest on. And yes, we seem to have a lot of people from over the other side of the planet, from United States coming on. And Tim today is no exception to that. But I will let him tell you, if he wants to, where he is and who on earth is he and what is he doing?
Appreciate you having me on, my friend. It's great to talk to you and share similar concepts and ideas of things that we both are high on in the mental fitness side of things and mental awareness and mental mindset. So it's great. So I am in near Allentown, Pennsylvania, in the United States, about an hour north of Philadelphia, and about an hour and a half west of New York City. So kind of give you an idea of where I'm sitting tonight. It's been outstanding. It's a great area, great weather right now too. But I've just retired in August from 36 years of college athletics. I was the baseball coach at DeSales University and enjoyed my time for a very long stint. Quite the journey, and it was okay. It was time to walk away, but I realized that I learned a lot of things over those years, and I think with age comes wisdom, as we all kind of figure that out as we go on. And that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, I was all right, what are you going to do with that wisdom? You're going to share it? You're going to help other people maybe benefit from it, gain from it? So kind of that's what I've fallen into in the last 6 months. Have my own podcast called Straight Lines. It's been very successful, very popular, in spite of me, right? It does pretty well. So we've had great guests, and we're going to have you on, sir, as well in a couple of weeks. And I'm enjoying it immensely. And again, it's giving the opportunity to share some leadership kinds of things and life lessons, some business if we need to, and tell the stories that, shape people's lives, shape my life, and continues to do so. So I'm having a blast doing it. I also do some color commentary for a local AAA baseball team, which is, the Philadelphia Phillies, and one layer down is the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. So I do color TV. I'm the color analyst for them, and that's a lot of fun. So, enjoying my life, watching my grandkids grow up and all that great stuff too. But I'm having a blast and getting an opportunity to meet people like you, Mikhail, and you help kind of share and blend audiences. I think is a great scenario for everybody that's listening.
Great. I'm really glad to hear that you haven't retired. I know you use that term, but that's a term I try to get for people to get rid of, because for me, it's not about retirement. It's about transitioning. What are you going to transition into? Because if you don't transition into something, you're going to get really depressed. There got to be something, and I'm really pleased to hear that you have found something. And so in some ways we are colleagues, which is fantastic. And also you're focusing on mental fitness, even though you don't use that term, I noticed. So I'm going to use that term today a bit. You can use your term. So what I would love to start with that question of what does mental fitness mean to you, and feel free to put in the way you normally talk about it.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question and a very important topic for everybody, whether you're male, female, business owner, employee, employer, athlete, student, whatever walk of life that comes along. the mental side of our lives are really important, and they dictate. The brain kind of leads us, then the body follows a lot of times. So I'm a firm believer in that, and I think the brain can overcome a lot of things. Sometimes your body, as we get older, as you know, your brain's like, okay, let's roll, and your body says, maybe later, right? Maybe
Yeah.
later, but still, the seed has been planted. I'm going to come back. I just want to touch base back on what you had mentioned about retirement, and I agree. Let's get rid of that term. And I think you and I spoke once before about four things in your life, and this is mental fitness. This is mental discipline. Something to do, something to look forward to, somebody to love, and something to believe in. And I think and this ties all into it, if one of those things is missing from your life, if you retire from work, that was your thing to do, and maybe look forward to, maybe not. Those things need to be replaced. If there's, an issue in a family member or something, that somebody passed, who knows? But there's something to love there, and that's got to get replaced immediately. And I think that encompasses mental fitness, and I call it mental mindset as well. I think they both are interchangeable. But I think mental fitness, from your terminology, I think it takes some practice and to be able to, I think fitness, I've got to exercise my brain, right? I got to make my brain work, because if my brain doesn't participate in anything, it's like any other muscle, it's going to deteriorate. And I think from that standpoint, it works out really well. And on my end, the mental mindset part of it, I really believe your mind and your brain can overcome a lot of issues. And I think that's prominent in most things you do. And let's face it, that's a part of overcoming adversity. That's what we're given with every day. I
Mhm.
don't want to do this podcast with Michael. I mean, I love the guy, but no, we're going to do it. And that's not true, by the way. I was looking forward to this, but there's some times where I know it might be the same for you, where you book something, you're going to go speak to parents, or who knows, you book something to speak at, and it's like feels good at the time because it's hard to say no. And then the time comes, it's like, oh man, why did I do that? Right? Why did I do that? And then, but being a professional and doing what you say you're going to do ends up, but it's okay. You show up and you do what you do, and people are counting on you,
Mm.
to deliver whatever it is they want you to talk about. And one of my guests, Mikhail, was Kevin Daly. So you probably heard of the Harlem Globetrotters, right? The basketball team that does all kinds of tricks and all kinds of stuff. So I interviewed the captain of the Harlem Globetrotters, 10-year captain, great guy, Kevin Daly. And we talked about a lot of topics, but one of the things I said, how do you handle that the year, it's 200 shows a year, you're a bunch of different countries, you might be in two different countries in 2 days, you might have two shows in a day. How do you handle it? And he says, it might be the first time anybody's ever saw me or saw our team play, and it could be the last time anybody ever saw me or my team play. And so that impression is so important to do. But if you don't have that mental fitness, right, then you don't have that mindset, like there might be some kid there's there for the first time, might have been a Christmas present. We're going to go see the Globetrotters. And you go out there and you dog it, and you're somebody that, wow, that was a waste of money. I don't ever want to go back and see that. And that just resonated with me. So anytime you speak, do a talk in public, do a podcast, you're in public, that's always in my mind, is like, it might be the first time your audience, obviously, may ever have encountered Tim Neiman, right? And when we have you on, be the first time anybody has encountered Mikhail. I mean, it's just, and I always remembered that. What does it do? Bottom line, that's solid mindset, right? I mean,
Mm.
that's mind, that is, mind fitness. And it to the extent, because that requires some practice and repetition. It's a daily habit. It becomes a habit, and your brain says, okay, we got a show today, might have two, We have an afternoon and an evening one. You're going to do this, right?
Mm.
You're going
Yeah.
to do this. And I think that's great advice
Mm.
for anybody. Make sure, like, it might be the first time somebody's watching,
Mm.
or it might be the last time somebody's watching, right?
Very, very good point there, Tim. And yes, my like you call it mental mindset, and absolutely, that's what it is. I think the reason I have chosen to use the word mental fitness rather than mindset, because it's only the last 4 years I have even known that term and fallen in love with it is because it's so easy then to relate it to physical fitness because people go, oh, yeah, of course, physical fitness, we need that. So what about mental fitness? And what's really fascinating to me at the moment, I've just actually, just before coming doing this with you, I just recorded one of my own episodes for next week, which is on that topic of mental fitness versus physical fitness. And I've just done research that has actually been sent out to millions of people, and we have had tens of thousands of people participate in that. And the question was, what is most important, mental fitness or physical fitness? And it's like I kind of expected that people would go, oh yeah, probably mental fitness. But we've had thousands of people respond to that, and more than 90% says mental fitness.
Well,
Yet it has so little emphasis in business of actually growing that. So that's, I'm kind of pulling my hair and say, how can that be that people are so clear how important it is, yet there's so little emphasis on it compared to technical fitness in terms of what you do for work and being physically well at work. So I just had to throw that in because it's so fresh in my
well,
mind.
I
Yeah.
think that's wonderful, Michael. I really do. And I think somehow there has to be a bridge. And I do agree. I've seen that survey, and I think you and I are on the same page. So important. People recognize it, but they don't know how to implement, perhaps. So I guess there has to be this, we have this gap. What's the bridge from we're going to the gym today, which has a connotation there. We're going to lift weights and do what we got to do. And maybe we need to go to the brain gym today, the mental fitness. I mean, there has to be some kind of a connection, a hook that's cool for people. And yeah, and I think it could be. I'm just not smart enough to come up with it, but you may be. I mean, just what's that brain gym that we're going to go to today to make ourselves better? If we are saying it's very important, how then do we get there? There's the so-called problem, but we've identified the problem, but what's the solution? How do we implement that and make it important in the business world
Yeah.
or athletics or anything else? Thanks.
Absolutely. And that's why I started this podcast, because I just wanted to bring more awareness to the topic of mental fitness, not as right or wrong, but just bring more awareness to it. And in that, the more aware we become of things, the more likely we are to actually take actions within that. So, I'm an awareness coach, really. And again, I also love what you said about it's so easy to say yes to things. Yes, I'm going to do this talk. I'm gonna do this, and it does require mental fitness in the moment to do that. Because if we feel that, oh no, that's just too, I can't do that, then we will say no. But it takes probably more mental fitness when you then come to the day and need to show up on stage and actually present. It's like we're gonna need it regardless. Now I want to
Yeah.
get to the real essence of these guest episodes, which is really hearing stories from my guest and today from you, Tim, of situations where things just did not work out. Like it might have been a massive failure or things fell over, and we can kind of go, right, was mental fitness lacking in that moment? Because I think stories are a really wonderful way of giving insight to stuff. And then, of course, we want to hear stories of some success, like it could be your podcast success, and what mental fitness did you need to have to be able to step into something completely new you never done before. So I will let you choose what side of the coin you wanna start on.
Yeah, those are great things, and again, people learn from stories. I guess I'm off my head here in my mental fitness journey. I think there's two things. There's a personal story of adversity, and it's my health side, and there's a professional story of some adversity I faced as a business owner while I was still coaching baseball too. I was still trying to do some other things, managing facilities. So let's start with the personal side, which I think is important. So in my speech, I talk in straight lines that, straight lines are just not leadership and life lessons, not professional and business all related. They're also personal related, so I think straight lines has a lot to do with mental toughness, mental fitness. And in my situation, from a health standpoint, I was that guy. I was that ignorant guy that nothing's going to happen to me. And this is not a good mental mindset at all, by the way, whatever you're doing. But I was that guy. And my message is, don't be that guy. I waited till I was 62 years old, giving away my age a little bit. I just gave my age away. But to have my first colonoscopy, right? Which was just insane. Why? Because I'm that guy. I am mentally weak from a standpoint of healthcare at the time. My wife's a 40-year nurse. She's fantastic. And here I am in a household with some medical staff, and I'm that guy. So what happens? I get a colonoscopy. I have 5 polyps. 3 of them are removed. The doctor says you have to come back and you need an advanced colonoscopy. I'm like, what? What? I know there wasn't such a thing. So I went back in 3 months. There's 2 polyps I couldn't get that were growing into my layers, and they couldn't get them. Then that doc comes out and says you need surgery. I said, what? So it's in the middle of my season, all kinds of stuff going on. I met with the surgeon, and excuse me, he said, we're gonna have to take some of your colon out. And again, I'm like, what? So I sat there and the reality kind of sunk in, because I was that guy. I'm facing, surgery to remove what turned out to be stage 1 cancer. And it's all self-inflicted, Mikhail. It's self-inflicted. I did it to myself. If I'd have got colonoscopies at 50 or whatever, really not, wouldn't be near this situation. So 3 months later, I'm in surgery in July. And I said to the doctor on the visit when we scheduled, I said, let me ask you a question, doc. And this is my mental mindset, my mental fitness responding to being that guy. And I said, doc, are you good? And he goes, yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm like, so I'm trying to build him. I said, whoa, I need a little better than that, right? I'm the patient. He goes, yeah, I'm good. I said, all right. So we go into surgery, and he's all ready. I'm ready. And he comes in, and I go, well, we're good to go. And I said, I'm going to ask you one more time, are you good? He goes, I am really good. That's what I'm looking for. So my mindset got in a good place. I got his mindset in a good place because he smiled, went in, came out, everything went well, took a foot of my colon. We have 6 feet of it inside of us. So, and he goes, I took your appendix just because it was in the way. I'm like, okay, you are good. So anyway, follow up a year later, and I see him, and I have a follow-up colonoscopy. So I'm getting them all the time, right? And he said, look, if I find anything, it'll be next year. We'll have to do it again another year. If I don't, we'll go 2 years. And I reached out and grabbed his arm. I said, don't look too hard. Right? Don't look too hard. So he goes, and I said, and before I even asked him, he goes, I'm really good. So I go in, he comes out, he's smiling, long story, but it's funny. He comes out, he goes, he's smiling, he goes, I found one. I'm like, oh man. He goes, but let's go 2 years. I'm like, you are really good. So all this stuff, you look back at that, and it's like my, inability to make good decisions health-wise was really kind of my weak mind fitness. It was. My mental fitness wasn't solid enough to trust people with my health. And then, all right, what are we going to do about it? We're going to crawl in a hole and, mope and be depressed. And there's a lot of scenarios that could come caving in on top of you, a lot. But I wasn't going to have that. I was going to trust the guy doing the work. And he did that. And he's great. So on the other side is And I was in a business where managing athletic facilities is pretty good, not enough, too many hands in a cookie jar, basically. Too many hands. Couldn't really make a lot of money. So I had a guy, that we were working for that decides not to pay me where I'm paying my staff and stuck me for a large amount of money, and this place was open. I have staff there and working. So I think from that side, my mental mindset was pretty strong. And I decided to do the right thing for a while
Mm,
so I could sustain it and paid them because they had families and obligation. And the right thing in my mind was to do that. But over 2 months, I couldn't sustain that, and that was the end of it. So another very difficult decision had to be made, and I walked away from the arrangement. And there's, half a dozen, 10 people that no longer were employed, and that's just a shame. But man, difficult decisions, especially when there's other people involved, right?
mm,
You have one side of my personal side was I was that guy. I was self-inflicted pain. On
mm,
the other side is, well, I'm responsible for a lot of people here, and I'm going to do my best to try to make it work, and it just never worked out. So I think those are two pretty good examples,
mm,
because if you're not strong in those situations and you're a leader, certainly on the personal side, all of us can do that. Everybody. But on the business side, everybody's cut out to run businesses and be a leader and whatever. But if you don't have that ability and have that fortitude, then all of a sudden, man, this thing's all going to collapse, and
mm,
anything else you try in the future will have no chance.
mm.
So here I am with the podcast and in the Neiman Legacy Network, trying to do some other things. Yeah, because of those lessons learned, and because there is some mental fitness and some toughness on top of it, being a college coach,
Mm.
mental toughness, right?
Yeah.
Always use the word toughness. You're able to succeed and learn. So I think those are two pretty good examples,
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely. And yes, we need that. Like, there's no way we can run a business or be a CEO or any leadership position without having some mental fitness. But also, mental fitness is not a black and white thing to me. It's on a scale, and it might vary from day to day a little bit, and different parts of our life or situations. We might feel very mentally fit at work and really deal with challenges really good. And then we come home to the marriage and then it crumbles and we go, oh God, and then we don't, or it could be the other way around. So to be
Yep.
highly mentally fit in every area of life is definitely not easy, but we all have some, and particularly if we're in business. And we all experience times when, for me, I'm reasonably mentally fit, and what I bloody well should be for the amount of years I've been working on it. And I still have times where I'm like, gee, I'm procrastinating on stuff that's really important because it's uncomfortable. And then I look back at that an hour later or the next day and go, wow, I mean, really? I of all people should be able to just go, hey, no, I'm mentally fit. I'm just gonna do what needs doing here, even though I don't want to, and I want to procrastinate on it. So, I fall for that as well. And for me, that again is the journey never ends. Like I still work on a regular basis on growing my mental fitness because I want to become better and I want to grow. So I'm just wondering, Tim, if you can maybe find a story from maybe going way back in your life. It might be at school or teenage or in your early stage as a coach where you did not have a very strong mental fitness and something it could be asked at school to do a speech in front of the class and kind of crumbling in that. So can you think of a story early on in your life where things did not kind of turn out too well because the mental fitness at that moment, that wisdom you were talking about, you hadn't achieved that wisdom yet?
Yeah, it doesn't yet exist sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Um, luckily, I've always been okay in front of people. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I think you acquire that over the length of time. And I think the younger Coach Nyman back in the day would sometimes speak before I thought, and your mouth would get you in trouble. And even though your intentions are good, still something might have come out that shouldn't have come out that way. And you find yourself, you got to apologize for it. I'm trying to think of something specifically that may have occurred over the years. And I'll tell you a lot of times without a question is with umpires, and I can tell you, I've been ejected from a lot of baseball games just because I was a little bit that guy once, and my mouth got in the way of my brain. So it was not real mental fitness. My mental fitness was not solid whatsoever. And there's a bunch of scenarios like that where, I would come out and argue with an umpire and say the wrong thing at the wrong time, and all of a sudden I'm no longer in the ballgame. And the assistant coach is running. And I can tell you that happened way more than I would like to admit. Um, but the learning process from that, I can tell you, the last five years of my career took that long. I didn't get any of those anymore because now I'm thinking about what I'm going to say before it comes out, or don't use the magic words. One magic word is you. You start saying you to them, you this, you that, you're, and you're probably done. So that's a magic word you can't use. So, but I kind of learned all that, and I kind of realized that they're human too, and they're, as long as they're trying their best, and they're not arrogant, they're not incompetent, you can't really get after them if they're trying to do the best they can. And the realization of that over time, it takes time, because baseball, especially, you want to be kind of sports in general, you want to be competitive, but out of that comes combativeness as well. And that's funny. I watch a soccer game, or do you guys call it soccer or football in New Zealand?
Soccer.
Soccer, good. So we watch soccer, and I watched the college game, I watched some stuff, and they're so polite, right? Sir, I was unlucky. What are we doing, sir? But then they get a little wound up, and all of a sudden, out comes the yellow card, out comes the red card, and see you later. But I can tell you, if umpires in baseball would have yellow cards, I would have had the whole deck, in a pretty short period of time. So I would have had them all, and probably half a deck of red cards. So I think that has a lot to do with your mind fitness, being able to, again, say what you need to say and how to say it, as opposed to just coming out and, yeah, I'm competitive, but I'm awfully combative here. And all of a sudden you are combative. Um, I think that's probably real good examples, and I could write a book on the stories of some of those outcomes as well, and they're pretty funny. And some I'm not very proud of either, right? I mean, I'm getting ejected, and that's not good. But some of them, you look back at some of them, it's like, well, that was pretty funny actually. So I would go that route for now. Um, I think those are good examples.
Yeah, perfect. And again, wisdom always comes in hindsight.
It does.
Yeah, so and we need to do that, particularly as children and as parent of children. I really believe that we need to allow our children to fail and fall off the bike. It's the quickest way to learn to ride a bike is by falling off. And it's just,
Absolutely.
oh, you can't fall off, and holding and making sure it's just going to take a lot longer to learn. So we need to do mistakes and to learn and to grow. And the higher our mental fitness is, the better we become at dealing with failure. And I did an episode called "Failing Forward," a term I learned from one of my coaches. I absolutely love that term because we are going to fail from time to time. There's nothing we can do about that. So why not have the mindset to, when we are failing, let's fail forward instead of failing backwards. And the baseball again is funny because I have no concept of baseball. I have no idea what baseball is. I didn't grow up with that in Denmark, and I grew up with football or soccer. And when I came here to New Zealand, they didn't know anything much about that, but they knew everything about rugby. I knew nothing about
Um,
rugby, so it's like, right, I need to try to understand that. So the question I have for you, Tim, is maybe give us another story that is some way unrelated in a way, but As a coach, of course, you will need to have a reasonably high level of mental fitness to be able to be even in that position. So I recognize that. My question to you is how important, and maybe you were doing it for 30 years, so I'm sure it changed over that period of 30 years. How important was it for you in that time as a coach to impart mental fitness onto your team, not just the skills of actually being physically fit and being able to throw the ball. I guess you throw a ball, don't you? There's a ball involved, hitting the ball and all of that. And the focus on growing the team's mental fitness, was that the same for the whole 30 years? Or did that change in your journey of becoming more important or less important? I'm really curious to hear that.
And that's a great question, Michael. I mean, and again, I think early on, you go back then and the 30-year-old coach, yeah, I'm that guy. I want to show everybody what I can do, and I'll move on to the next thing and the next thing. And you forget about the players that you're responsible for sometimes, more often than not when you're younger. And I think the sooner that coaches can discover that the vehicle for all your success are and employees, right? Employers, your employees and your team, your athletes or whatever, they're the vehicle for your success.
Yeah.
What you've got to try to do is guide them, right? And keep those lines straight, if you will, to try to, point out some stuff. So I think early on in my coaching career, I could probably my delivery was probably a little more firm with them, a little more direct.
Mm.
And as the years went on, not so much. I used to have the rule, well, for the one time I chastise you or maybe you aren't so nice, I will give you 10 verbal bouquets. How you're doing great, blah, blah, blah. But then at one time I unloaded, and I kind of thought that was a ratio that sort of fit for the while. But you don't know because each kid takes that one time a little bit different than the other. And then as it goes on, I think these days, in the last couple of years, that might be 50 to 1. At one time, all right, but now I need 50 verbal bouquets to pat him on the back. I'm thinking of a story of a young player who led, he was the all-time home run, so hit the ball over the fence, right? All-time home run leader at the school I was at. And he was a quiet young man, very quiet, kind of reserved, but he could hit. He was a good player. But he would go in baseball, we call them slumps. He would have a tough time. He couldn't get ahead. He couldn't do anything right. And so the first time, what I would do is the team would take batting practice, one of the other coaches would throw, and I'd walk through the outfield and try to speak with each one of them individually for a minute or two, whatever. Is everything okay? How's school? Everything okay at home, mom and dad, and I would get to him. His name was Brett Varga, awesome young man. He's now a principal in school district in New Jersey. And I get to him and I put up my arm around him because I know he's kind of reserved, kind of slumped shoulders, You would never guess he was a great player. I put my arm around him. I said, "Hey, Brett, anytime you want to chip in, go ahead." And he's looking at me. I said, "Yeah, in case you're looking for my permission to kind of go do something good, I'm giving you permission. Go ahead, chip in." And he's like, "Oh," kind of hit him, it kind of resonated. So it became this thing, Mikhail. And if he was going good, we talked about other things, but if he had trouble in those last 3-4 games, I'd get out there. He goes, "I know, coach. Are you giving me permission to chip in?" So it became this smile and relief for him. And this continued his 4 years of school and tremendous player, and it becomes quite the story. It's a lot of fun. One other example of a player that I had, he was a 2-time All-American shortstop, played in the middle of the field, great player. And I realized his second year with me in the fall, where we were doing fall practice, that he didn't like practice very much, not at all, And I'm like, I would get on him a little bit, try to, as a coach would do, try to turn up the dial some. And same thing, one day during batting practice, I went out and stood next to him. And I said, Ian, I said, you don't like practice very much, do you? And he goes, I don't, coach. But and I'm like, you know what? Neither do I. I was kind of fibbing a little. I said, neither do I. But I said, what we've got to try to do is make sure we make an effort that doesn't bring other people down, that will not allow them to lower their level. You do it because you're sensationally gifted. You can do it without, it's like the kid that gets straight A's that never opens a book at home, right? They're out there, they get good grades. And he's a great baseball player that doesn't have to do extra stuff, but we'd love him to. So I said, let's make a deal, you and I, not distract everybody else. Can we do that? He goes, yeah, I get it. I understand that. So he went on, two-time All-American. I mean, tremendous player. He was an awesome player. So kind of how you say things back then, and that was probably halfway through my career, that I always had this little, I don't know, sarcastic side or a way to get to everybody. Not the problem. What you've got to be able to do is realize that they're all different, right? I had one rule in a baseball team: don't embarrass the ball club. Now that's broad, right? Real broad. But that's your mom and dad, that's your teammates, that's coaching staff, that's people that come watch us play, it's alumni, whoever. Don't embarrass them. And to each one that maybe means a little bit different, but this broad-based rule that worked for 2 decades, right? 2 decades. And if you'd ask any of those players today, what's Coach Neiman's one rule? Don't embarrass the team. So they know where the line would be. And if they do now, there's consequences on the other side. But what I say to one person, I can't say to somebody else. They're all different. They all have different buttons. And as a kind of a little more harsher story, similar year, there was an outfielder. Now, he was a very intelligent young man, very intelligent, but a little sneaky, little shaky kind of guy. And we hadn't played well, so I was kind of jabbing at every player. As in my old days, they'd take a knee and bang, 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 and I'm just thumping away. And I get to him and I said, look, I don't like you. I don't trust you. I said, if you ever need me for a reference, don't ask. If you ever get married, don't invite me because I'm not coming. And I said, but I will tell you that I just want you to know where I stand with you. But I will tell you this, for the good of the team, that doesn't mean I'm not going to play you. So he played all the time and hit a grand slam to get us to a World Series. I mean, had a pretty good career, but to this day, I wouldn't trust him with, the family jewel. I mean, I wouldn't trust him, right? To this day. But that's something I could say to him that I thought mattered. Right next to him was a kid in the same position, said, I do like you. If you're ever in a situation you need a reference, I'd love to be one for you. If you get married, I'd be honored to come. But it doesn't mean I'm going to play you. All right. So, there's my mental gymnastics, if you will, back and forth, with these kids that try to find the buttons to motivate them. But at the same time, though, again, that 10-to-1 verbal bouquet ratio had to be intact. So the next day you come out and say, hey, look, I hope you didn't think I was too harsh. I'm just trying to make a point with you. And, we need to grow up and get through all this. And, then it's a little kumbaya. Everybody feels a little better. And, you go on, but you have to mean that too. They'll know. They'll play hard for you and they'll trust you if they know you care about them first. And if you care about them, they'll trust you and they'll care for you. And that's how it works.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, beautiful, Tim. And there are two ways I think to make it really simple. There are two ways that we can learn things. Like we can either study it and practice it, or we can show it and help other people achieve it. Um, so like if you want to grow your own baseball game, you can do that by practicing on your own and your skill, but you can also do it by becoming a coach. I put in air quote, become a coach and help your teammate and help other people to do better. Because in you doing that, you have to start being able to articulate what it is and in that you're growing your own awareness and your own skill level. So the same goes for mental fitness. We can grow our own mental fitness by reading books and going to mental fitness gyms and so on. But we can also grow our mental fitness by helping growing other people's mental fitness. So for you as a baseball coach, when you stepped in, whether you did it consciously or not, and help grow their mental fitness. And now in hindsight, you go, well, actually, I helped these guys grow their mental fitness through the way I communicated with them. And yes, as I got wiser and wiser along the way, I got better and better at that. So I think it's really important, to have that understanding that helping other people growing their mental strength also grows our own mental strength in that. And there was a one word that came to me when you shared the first part of your story, which was the word empathy, where you actually connected with that really, really good baseball player, but who had like challenges for himself and believing in himself. And then by telling him, yeah, I also have problems with that. Or, I don't like practicing either. Because who does really, So,
That's
so in that connection, creating that connection with people is an aspect of mental fitness because we have to be vulnerable in that moment. And remember, well, I'm the coach, or I'm better than you guys, or I'm the leader, I'm the boss. I'm the one paying your wages, and I'm the one telling you what to do. It generally doesn't create good results. But if we can just come off that pedestal for a moment and say, maybe I'm a better baseballer than you, maybe, I know things about baseball that you don't, but I'm also a human being. And people will listen to that far more than if you're an absolute expert, in my experience. Does that ring true
Oh,
for you?
I agree. I agree. Empathy is huge. I think, again, if they know you care, they know you'll shed a tear over something, they're going, you have that connection. That connection is really important. And humility goes with that too. Hey, you won so many games, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I didn't win any games 'cause I never played. I never played, 868 wins and like 500 plus losses. I own those losses. So the players know that. I wasn't a very good coach that day. You need as a leader to pull that responsibility away from them and accountability, but they still have to learn, what it is that maybe got the train off the tracks, right?
Mhm.
I think empathy and humility are two very, very big parts of that. I think that's wonderful. And as a leader, you can't be that guy. As I mentioned earlier
Mhm.
or in the show, you can't be that guy. And people, they look right through that. They don't
Yes.
care. Who look at you and they won't respond 1 second with that guy. I don't want to be around that guy, right? They want to be around somebody that smiles and, hugs them and teaches them that points out their issues without chastising. And, the stuff I said to the one I don't like you, I didn't, use me as a reference, blah, blah, blah. I could have never said to the boy I put my arm around and said, hey, anytime you want to chip in, right? If I'd have used that other tactic against him, I would have destroyed him. But
Mhm.
the other one was that guy, and I needed to chop him down a little bit, bring him back to reality and say, you're not fooling anybody. But on the other hand, you've got all these talents and abilities
Mhm.
that we need to have them come out. Once you go relax and go play the game the
Mhm.
way you're meant to be played. So yeah,
Yeah.
you need a bunch of stuff in your toolbox and be able to diversify it a little bit as well. Got this general, umbrella of culture, of chemistry, of class and pride. Don't embarrass the team, history, all those things going together. But when it comes time, the push comes to shove.
Mhm.
You've got the structure, and that structure will hold you up, and hopefully you make a good decision.
Yeah. And particularly in leadership again, there's no, I think there's definitely no one way of dealing with any situation and with different people. And if we are lacking a bit in mental fitness, we might have one approach in the way we're dealing with, say, conflict or challenges in our team. And that might land for half of the team, or 80% of the team, or 20% of the team. So the more we choose to grow our mental fitness, the better we become at listening and feeling into, okay, so you did these two completely different approaches because you knew that that approach will not work with this person. And that takes a certain level of mental fitness to do that because you have to listen. One of my favorite sayings, I don't know where I learned it, unfortunately, but I keep using it, is always seek to understand before seeking to be understood. And in my opinion, many managers and leaders do it the other way around. So I'm the boss, I'm telling you, I understand, I want you to understand. Whereas if we just it takes some more time, which people think they don't have, to actually go, well, I'm just going to take a little bit more time to understand who you are and why are you doing, why did you do that mistake you did? And then listen and then give some feedback based on understanding that other person more before we lose our plot and start raising our voice and then having to come back and apologize or whatever
No,
the situation may be.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mikhail, because listening, you can't you can't be really mentally fit if you don't be a good listener. No, we're not born with that. We're born to respond, right? You're in a crib and you're crying, you want milk. Hey, listen, I don't care what you're doing. Feed me, feed me. Same thing goes on as you grow up. And I think listening is a skill that takes time to acquire. And the more we talk about that, the more people will understand, to listen to understand, and the better they're going to be. It's hard. I'm not sure I became a good listener until maybe 10 or 15 years ago, probably. But you talk about mental fitness and a mindset that says, you know what, I am going to make a point to listen to this person speak. I'm going to listen, and if there's a response required, okay, we'll do so. But I'm not going to sit here and say my time's more important than yours. I want to hear what you have to say. Everybody should be able to contribute, especially in an organization or a team.
Hmm.
Love it.
Fantastic. So, can you can you share? Did you already share like a part of your journey with your mental fitness journey and how it grew along the way and even wisdom coming into it along the way? Um, I'm curious if you can share with us if there's any points, a couple of points in your life where you specifically either consciously grew your mental fitness and well, I need not using that term, but just going, I need to get mentally stronger here. So I did X, Y, Z, and something happened to you that grew your mental fitness, that you became mentally stronger out of an experience you had. Are there one or two things you can share with our audience on that?
Oh, again, very good questions. And there are so many things that happen in the course of our lives, that we are challenged. And, most of it's adversity. How do we overcome that? That really defines us as a human being, is how we handle adversity. I mean, it just does. And I love your point of, failing forward, because if we've not learned, if we've not failed, we've never will learn nothing. We think everything's perfect, right? And I think, as a coach, as a business guy, even podcaster now, I think we run into that. You don't have all the answers. You just don't. And in the coaching, there's always potholes and there's always bumps and curves. And sometimes the pothole wins, sometimes the pot. And I think there's times where you think you have a grip on all the culture and all the chemistry, and then something drastic happens on the other side, where, there was a situation in our team a long time ago where there was an off-campus incident and one of my players put another non-player, somebody that showed up at their house at a party, put him in a hospital. You put him in a hospital. All right. So, okay, we've got major issues here because, did you embarrass the team? Well, I'll say, you know, It became news locally. And here's this team that's so good, nationally ranked in American, college baseball, and all of a sudden they've got this internal problem became very external.
Mm.
So he was our starting catcher at the time, and I had a structure and the organization and the culture over everything else. So I could have said, all right, don't do that again. Don't, we don't do that. The nice, I know I probably would have done the same thing, but no, no, I had to throw him off the team. I dismissed him from the team, one of our starting players. And what happens is a domino effect, of doing that because everybody's going to start moving guys around. And I think you made the comment and the point earlier. I think people really respond and they learn, maybe not in that moment. They certainly don't. There's a whole lot of other things emotionally going on that our whole season's wrecked because one of our starters coach threw him off the team. So they're probably mad at me. But down the road, they're like, boy, I'm really glad he did that. I needed to hear that. I needed to learn. I need to know that's not acceptable. I need to know I have to be accountable for my actions. And I need to know that other people are counting on me, determining that. And I think that was a time for me that was certainly a crossroads where I could have chosen to handle that a little differently. All right, okay, I'm gonna give you 2 games off.
Mm.
And no, you clobbered somebody, it was the rugby players would have loved it. Clobbered somebody and put him in a hospital. So we don't do that. You're off the club.
Mm.
If you end up good behavior, whatever, we'll bring you back next year if I get permission to do so.
Mm.
And we did. He handled himself fine. He came back and he's grown up and he's doing great. He's just so well.
Mm.
So, what we're doing, being responsible and being mentally tough, fitness wise, as coaches and leaders, coaches especially, we're making better husbands, better employers and better employees
Mm.
and better parents.
Mm.
Those are all mental fitness things that are, you've got to handle those things.
Yeah.
But knowing that, we'll use my straight lines metaphor, there's always bumps in the road, right?
Mm.
There's always those potholes. And don't let the pothole win. How fast can you change the tire and get back on track, to make those better people that we're responsible for?
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. And again, you in that point, one, you needed your mental fitness to be reasonably high to make that decision, but it probably also grew your mental fitness going through that process, and you most likely also grew his mental fitness, not in the moment, but in him in hindsight, going, well, actually, yeah, I need to become a better person because I am a better person than that. And in that, there's a growth of his mental fitness as well. And I couldn't help smiling. You mentioned it now twice, the word potholes, and it just reminds me of my time in Africa. I spent 20 months traveling with a backpack in Africa, and trust
Wow.
me, I saw some potholes that like big potholes, and going through Zaire, which it was called at the time, um, no car can go through. Like four-wheel drives can't go through. It's only trucks. And you understand suddenly why there are no cars on the road when you get to these potholes and you're sitting up on top of them. You're not in the cabin. You're sitting up on whatever it is the truck is loaded with. That's the only transport. There's no buses. And you understand when we get there why, because you get these massive potholes and the truck's going like that. And I was like, wow, that's the biggest pothole I'll ever see. Until a few hours later, we end up in a pothole that is so big that we had to get off the truck. And I go about 20 meters to the side of the road and I put my head down at the level with the road and I cannot see the truck. And
Oof.
there's
Wow.
two trucks in front that I have gone through that are linked up with wire and cables. They are now pulling that truck out. And then the next truck, you're sitting in a queue of 15 trucks. The next truck drives into this pothole. And then the other two in front now pull that truck through. an incredible experience in my life. And again, mental fitness for those people in that moment is high because they don't go, oh no, hey, oh no, call the government or this is it. It's just like they have got to get their truck through. How do we work together
Yep.
in solving this problem? And there is a fairly high level of mental fitness to pull that through. So thank you for those stories. And let's finish with two things. One, any ideas or suggestions you have to our audience of how they could grow their mental fitness? It could be as simple things as a book you read that made a difference to your life, any specific things you have done, or any sort of general suggestion that you can share with our audience.
Yeah. I'll give one very simple thing, and it's we call it "Don't get bloody," right? Don't get bloody. So here's an example. We take years ago before the pandemic, um, we take tickets at the high school game. We have high school playoffs, state playoffs, blah blah blah, and they would play cash or whatever. Then after the pandemic, the goes. All electronic tickets. You scan it. Scan your tickets. And I said to the guy that was in charge of, the state tournament, I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, I'm 82 years old. I'm here with my wife. We just want to watch our grandson play. I have no idea how to, buy a ticket online, let alone scan it with somebody. I just want to watch the ball game. And the guy says to me, you know what, coach? He goes, we don't get bloody. And it dawned on me, it's like, that makes a lot of sense because if you didn't get that directive, you'd be saying, all right, look, the only way I can let you in if you buy it online, we can show you how to do it, scan it, blah, blah, blah. But, otherwise you can't watch the game. Can you imagine a disappointment over something so silly,
Mhm.
so dumb? Don't get bloody. And you think about it, Mikhail, the people in your life and people around, the examples on the media, and a drop of the hat, and they want to mix it up and get bloody. And I think that takes a lot of mental fitness to walk away from issues that like, why do I care?
Yeah.
I'm not going to engage in this. Why get bloody? And I think that's
Mhm.
a really good thing to remember. It's in one of my books, Team Killers. I write about that. I think it's a great concept and a mindset for me and part of the mental fitness overall, coverage that, you
Mm.
know, I'm not getting bloody over this, I'm just not.
Mm.
I don't need to. We'll move on to the next thing, right? I think it's great.
Yeah, I think I've never heard it said that way before. That's what I love about having guests on. They bring me all these new, different ways of looking at things, different language, which is great. It's great, not just for me, it's great for the audience as well. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I heard you mention about a book. So we'll make sure that all your details are in the description so people can check out your books and all of that. But what I do want, just maybe for a minute or two, um, is for you to, because I'm sitting here looking at straight lines, and I know you have a podcast, and I know that you have invited me to come on, and I look forward to that. But just tell our audience just a little bit about maybe why did you start that, and what is it about, and where can people find it?
That's a great, and I appreciate that question very much. So straight lines, you can find it on wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, iHeart. We have a YouTube channel. So all the guests are on there and they're fantastic. The concept started because I am that baseball guy, right? I am that guy. And I would always be enamored when I would go to a ballpark. And you walk through the gate, the stadium, and probably same on a rugby field, or what you walk like, wow, look at the straight lines. So that's the physical optic of it. Straight line, how the grass is cut, right? Goes one way, the other way. Well, there's a lot of straight lines, but the story, it's more than that. It's a metaphor. My straight lines is people care. So the quick story is I was at a ballpark. I was coaching professional baseball, and we'd get there early. And what I would do is park my stuff in the locker room. I'd walk through the ballpark, sit in the grandstand, and kind of observe. That's just what I did. And it rained the night before at this place, a little north of Boston, Massachusetts. And the staff's out there rubbing seats, wiping the seats down, drying them off, but also was a guy like you and I that was pretty classy, professional. I'm like, well, there's no way that guy's serving popcorn, or there's no way he's tapping a beer. Ain't no way. But you know what he's doing? He's wiping seats down too, because he cares. So I get up, start walking across the field. He starts walking with me. And I said, I got to tell you, I think I am impressed that the preparation for your customers, for your fans. I said, I can tell you care. And he says, Coach, I don't get that very often. He reaches out his hand. He says, I'm the owner of the team. He was the owner of this ball club. And you know what, Mikhail? That's a straight line. He cares, because otherwise, hey, I don't care. Come on in and wipe it down yourself with a napkin or paper towel. And I mean, who cares? But he's doing the same thing. And you know what? That mattered to me. So each guest, they ask what the straight lines mean. I get a bunch of different answers, but it's a North Star, changing a tire, keeping a train on it, whatever. And I think it's a great metaphor for doing things right, knowing the path to success is not a straight line. It's just not. So I got to try to smooth all those bumps out and get all that stuff smoother, because the more your lines are straight, the more success you're going to have. And that's a mindset. That's mental fitness right there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll make sure to pop links into your Straight Lines podcast as well. And then I'm going to look forward to being on the other side of the equation with you next time. So with all that said, thank you so much, Tim, for coming on today and sharing a part of your life story. I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And to our audience, I really like posing the question at the end is like, what was your biggest takeaway today from this episode? Because when we reflect on what we've just listened to or learned or heard, it strengthens the learning. So I encourage you just to take a moment to reflect on what was the biggest takeaway for you. And then, if okay with you, pop it in the comments below. And as always, look out for ways to consciously grow your mental fitness. Till next time. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. If you have stories of how mental fitness has benefited you that you are happy to share, go to my website, mikhail.nz, click on podcast and fill in the guest application form. If you want direct support from me utilizing my 40 years of mental fitness learning and practice, email me at coach@mikhail.nz or message me on LinkedIn. Any feedback, review, share, follow, like, or any other good stuff is, of course, appreciated. Thank you for listening to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail Nelson.